Hear me out here. Sean Murphy needs to play more. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, your home for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh. Follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. You can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack. We've got a Facebook page, a Twitter account, Braves_Today, and an Instagram too. And Christian, I want to talk about the catcher position. We've been, the last week or so, pretty much what I've been trying to do is go through all of the different problem areas of the team, talk about what you can do, how to deploy the outfield, because you have decisions to make out there with Ramon Laureano, where to play Jorge Soler. We talked about shortstop yesterday. It's not the biggest thing on the team, but if you want to improve, there's a way to do that. But I want to talk about catcher because Sean Murphy was acquired to be the guy for Atlanta. And he has struggled through injury, through fatigue, other things like that. And a lot of the fan base, it feels like, at least what we see on our Twitter account, on Facebook, things like that, have turned on Sean Murphy and they see the trade for Murphy as a mistake. And I want to acknowledge two things can be true at once. His performance as a whole with Atlanta has not been great, but also he's capable of a lot more than he's done, and I think he's better than he gets credit for. So let's break down what he did. Let's talk about how to fix Sean Murphy, and let's talk about how Drake Baldwin fits into this whole situation. But first, I want you to guess the difference in his batting average between his 4 years in Oakland and his 2 years in Atlanta. How many points do you think they're different?
Batting average. Okay. I think it's definitely been a little bit of a decrease, although I think that overall his play has been pretty decent. I'm actually going to fight back with you on some of this stuff. It's going to be a fun episode here today. But I think his batting average is probably decreased, let's say 30 points.
His batting average in Oakland is 236 across 330 career games across 4 years. His batting average in Atlanta, 2 years, 180 games, 229. 7 points different.
Wow. Okay.
His OPS was doing better. Guess which city, which franchise he had a better OPS in, Atlanta or Oakland?
Yeah, see, this is where I'm going to fight with you, which I think we're actually might be on the same page, actually. He's probably better in Atlanta.
OPS of 764 in Atlanta, OPS of 755 in Oakland. His on base has been 9 points better in Atlanta. His slugging has been, I believe, I can't do math in my head, 1 point better in Atlanta. So he's been mathematically a better hitter in Atlanta than he was in Oakland in almost every respect except for 7 points of batting average. And I'll admit, it's been hot and very cold, right? The first half of last year, Sean Murphy bats 306 with a 400 on base and a 599 slugging. Hit 17 home runs in the first half of 2023, was an all-star. And I think part of this, if you remember, Travis d'Arnaud missed a month with a concussion. So 67 games played for Sean Murphy. He starts 62 of them. Hits the 17 home runs. OPS of 999. So close to a 1. OPS. Looked like a genius. Since the All-Star break of 2023, Sean Murphy has hit 181 with 14 home runs. Now, granted, he missed a lot of time this year, but it still comes out to more games and more at-bats than he had in the first half. He hasn't caught up on the home runs, and the batting average has been pretty rough. To go along with that, his salary increases this year from $9 million to $15 million as part of the extension that he signed soon after the trade with Atlanta. There's a lot of, I'm going to go through them in just a second. There's a lot of injury concerns and things that have happened to him in since the All-Star break. Is it right for Braves fans to be concerned when you look at his career numbers in each city, or is this something where his Atlanta numbers feel like they're being carried by that hot first half?
I think you could make an argument for both. And I think that there's room for concern here because you're paying a guy to be your backstop of the future for the next 6 years for a $73 million contract. That's a big number for, especially for Braves, what we have seen over the past couple of years of how AA has treated this roster and how he has developed. So I think there are some concerns, but I do think that those concerns maybe are a little bit pushed too far on the recency bias because of how he performed this year. We got to think about what happened at the beginning of this season. I know you're going to get into the injuries, but the
Yeah.
very first game of the year, he was
Mhm.
dealing with an oblique injury,
Seventh
and
inning.
dare I say, he probably was dealing with that all year long, even though he came back after 100 something games. So yeah, I do think that there was a little bit of concern there. But last year he looked great, especially at the beginning of the season. And I know he wasn't that great in the second half, but if we were having the same conversation just 1 year ago to the date last year, would we be as concerned or would we be maybe showing more of a negative discourse that we are pointing towards right now about Sean Murphy? I think we'd be a little bit more optimistic about what we were going to expect heading into this season. Before the oblique injury, I had a lot of optimistic views about Sean Murphy, and I'm going to continue them moving into 2025. And
Mhm.
I'm going to explain why here later in this episode, and I think you are too.
Yeah, and so to clarify, down the stretch last year, there's a couple things that happened to Sean Murphy. The first one, if you remember, there was like a week where Atlanta carried 3 catchers. It was because Sean Murphy was dealing with a hamstring issue. And like at one point, I remember about a 4 or 5 day stretch when there were no backup infielders, none. And the plan, Atlanta's stated plan, I think it was Mark Bowman asked around the clubhouse. The stated plan was 4 injuries at any infield position. If you needed somebody to cover third base in an emergency, Eddie Rosario was going to come down and do that. If I think it was no, second base was Eddie Rosario. Third base was going to be Adam Duvall. Shortstop was going to be Austin Riley. He was going to shift over and cover shortstop. And first base was going to be Travis d'Arnaud. And it was because they had to carry an extra catcher because of the hamstring concern for Murphy. And then also, he admitted at Braves Fest last year that the heat in Atlanta bothered him down the stretch. And if you think about it, so this is a dude that was in Oakland for multiple years. It's very mild and temperate all the time in Oakland. Atlanta is probably the hottest ballpark to play in the month of July and August because the grueling heat, the humidity, so much worse. And so it's understandable that he slumped down the stretch last year. But then this year, you mentioned the oblique injury, seventh inning of game one. So he never really got into his regular season form after spring training, where these guys don't play a ton. And then when he came back, I think a bit sooner than maybe we thought. He came back in May. So he only missed like he got hurt March 29th. He came back May 27th, which the oblique is really like you use your obliques a lot as a baseball player. Surprising he came back. I don't think he was fully healthy. When you look at some of the components of his game where the inability to rotate and things like that, or this pain or discomfort uh, in rotation, which you use your obliques for, it would make sense that he wasn't fully healthy. Caught stealing, he went from above average to below average on caught stealings. It was a 20% rate in 23. It was an 11% rate this year. His exchange was about the same. His arm strength was about the same. But the pop time, the ability to come out of your crouch and make the throw, he went from 1.89 seconds to second to 1.94. Doesn't sound like a lot. He went from second best pop time in 23 to 25th best pop time in 24. Honestly, I would understand if your oblique is sore, is weak, there's discomfort. I could understand the ability to pop up and make a throw. You would not be doing that as fast. Okay.
That's a lot of rotation, right? That's a lot of
Yeah.
rotation. That sounds like him taking it a little bit easy because he was still dealing with that oblique injury. So yeah, I agree with you. That to me, that's a stat that points it right there. maybe more than any other one.
Yeah, that he probably wasn't 100%. Now, I will give a counterpoint on this. I don't know what sample sizes on caught stealings are statistically valid, right? 64 attempts against him last year, only 44 this year. And the expected caught stealings were significantly different. He was at a 14% last year. The expected is based on the speed of the runner, the lead that they had, your pop time, how many should you have caught versus how many you actually did. He caught 20%. The expected was only 14 last year. This year, he caught only 11. The expected was 16%. So maybe he was really lucky last year and unlucky this year. Again, I don't know what the sample size required for that to be statistically valid is, but I think it's worth pointing out that expected numbers, he performed around the same. So I don't know how much we can learn from that. But for me, a lot of guys in their prime don't lose that big of a pop time without there being some sort of underlying issue, right?
No, yeah, I think so
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I actually didn't know that stat heading in here, so I'm glad that you brought
There you
that
go.
up. But
There you go.
that helps my argument even more to think that he was dealing with this injury not just until late May when he returned. And it was clear that he wasn't 100% when he returned. He
Oh, yeah.
struggled a little bit until the middle of June, really, until he got that 4-hit game. I believe that was in the middle of June. That's
Mhm.
when we really started seeing, okay, this is the Sean Murphy. He looked like he's starting to get back into the groove a little bit. And his numbers were never good this year. There's no doubt about that. I think his
Yeah.
best month was just in the sevens when you were referring to OPS wise. But if you have a healthy Sean Murphy for the foreseeable future, for let's just say that we have no injury concerns for Murphy in 2025, I think that you can easily have an expectation that those OPSs get back to the 850 mark. His
Mhm.
batting average gets back to the 250 areas. And I think that
Mhm.
is enough. He doesn't have to be a 300 batting guy. He doesn't have to OPS 999 like he did at the
In
beginning of
that
the
first
All
half,
Star.
yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have to
It would be
do that.
nice,
It would, oh,
but
absolutely. But if
yeah.
you're at, but what we've seen this past season in 2024, we mentioned it on yesterday's show between Orlando Arcia and the catching, duo of Travis d'Arnaud and Sean Murphy. Those two together were basically back and forth in the starting lineup. And it was almost like you had a guaranteed out, almost like that inning was a wash because of those two positions. If you can
Mhm.
just get that out of the picture and know that you have an actual better chance because you're going to have a
Competitive
guy
at
that's hitting,
bats. Yeah.
you're going to have a 100 OPS guy, then it's a completely game changing event for 2025 and for the Braves.
Yeah.
100%.
And before the break, real quick, I have more evidence that I think the oblique was bothering him. Like, I'm not even done with that yet, believe it or not, guys. So he's always been a really good fastball hitter. Okay. Going back every season of his career, 2019 through last year, I'm going to start the oldest and come newest. Here are his batting averages against fastballs: 333, 250, 245, 258, 275. He's always been a good hitter off of fastballs. This year, 182. Now, some of this feels like it may have been bad luck. The expected batting average, and again, I am a believer in expected stats a bit, right? Like the concept of how this should work, I'm a believer in that. We'll break that down on a different show. Expected batting average was 240, but he struggled against fastballs for the first time in his career. And if you think about which pitch do you have to be the quickest to fire off a swing and be able to catch up to a pitch, it's a fastball. It would make sense if you were slowed by discomfort or weakness in a rotational muscle, like an oblique, that you would struggle with fastballs versus a breaking pitch or something like that because you have to be the fastest on that. And then also being able to elevate the ball for really the first time in his career was also an issue. He had a ground ball rate over 50% for the like he was at 53.3% this year. Last year, 41.4%. A 12% increase in ground ball rate feels to me like he also wasn't able to get the proper loft on his swing because he had an oblique issue and he was struggling there. So, I do think that there's enough without him saying it directly. I do think there's enough for us to reasonably assume he was not fully healthy all year. He was also a little bit unlucky, like everybody else was. He was also pressing, like everybody else was. And all of that combined to give a poor season that we can assume, I think reasonably, would not be repeated next year.
No, I agree with you. And I'm look at you. We're adding so much evidence to show that Sean Murphy really all he needs to do is get more time at the plate, be healthy. Is that are we asking too much? We might be based on this Braves team, what we saw last year. Asking the Braves team to be healthy, that might be asking too much, Lindsay. But that's all we're asking. We're asking him to just be more consistent. And the way you do that is to be healthy and to get more plate appearances. That comes down
Yeah.
to Brian Snicker putting him in the lineup more, not bouncing him back and forth like they were all season long. I think that came into play with the injury, by the way. I
Mhm.
think that changes in 2025.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get into how to fix Sean Murphy in 2025, what the team has to do, and how Drake Baldwin fits into this. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay, Crosby, Christian Rauh. Again, you can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. Lots of stuff coming out there every single week. It is completely free to sign up. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Okay, so talking about Sean Murphy, obviously we recapped. I'm going to speak for us. We are of the belief that the injuries played a big part in his struggles this year, as well as some of the other stuff the guys all dealt with. The underperformance because of the dead balls, pressing because of all the injuries, things like that. I Before we get into next season, I do want to let everybody know, if I don't know if you guys realized this. Braves catchers as a whole weren't actually that great this season. As a collective group, they hit 222, 25 home runs, a 691 OPS. Now, Travis d'Arnaud was better on paper. His batting average 239, OPS of 744. He hit 15 of those 25 home runs. But I will say, of Travis, and this is not a dig at Travis d'Arnaud. I love Travis d'Arnaud. I've talked to him. He's a great dude. He's great quotes, tons of fun to be around. Of Travis d'Arnaud's 15 homers, 7 of them came in 3 games. He had a 3-homer game and 2 2-homer games. The other 8 were spread out across the entire season, right? Also, from August 1st on, he batted 184 with a 583 OPS, which if we're mad at Sean Murphy for how Sean Murphy did, Travis d'Arnaud was Sean Murphy down the stretch. Because again, Sean Murphy batted 193 down the stretch. Travis d'Arnaud batted 184, and his OPS was higher than Travis d'Arnaud's from August 1st on. Maybe playing catcher in the major leagues is just hard to do because it feels like it's so hard to find decent offensive production there. But I do have hope that Sean Murphy can be better in 2025. And like you said, I think a lot of it comes down to he just needs to play more
Yeah,
when healthy.
he just needs to play more. And I'll even add d'Arnaud into that conversation, not on the play more side, but I think that those two catchers still need to be the two catchers on this roster in 2025. And I still have a good thought process about Drake Baldwin, which we'll get to later on.
Yeah.
But the reason behind that, Lindsay, maybe it's not even the batting portion, because I do think that's going to improve in 2025 if Sean Murphy stays healthy. Him alone will fix that portion. But defensively, what they did with this young pitching staff this year, with all the different injuries of the pitching staff, Sean Murphy, I was trying to find the stat while we were chatting here. I can't find it. I had it at one point, but he picked up so many shutouts this season. He caught so many shutouts this season. That's a whole nother stat that we don't talk about enough. He's done a lot behind the plate. Travis d'Arnaud has done a lot behind the plate defensively. And I think that is huge for all these young pitchers coming up and developing this rotation, especially because we don't know the status of what's going to happen to Max Fried. We don't know the status of what Spencer Strider is going to be, if he's going to be 100% moving into 2025. There's going to be a lot of questions. Having that veteran backstop presence will be absolutely huge moving into the beginning of the season in 2025. And you add on again, I think we go ahead and we'll talk about just doing the same things over and over again. But if you have a consistent and healthy Sean Murphy behind there, this is a completely different ball team. It's a completely
Yeah.
different ball team. Oh, and by the way, you're bringing guys Acuna back, like Riley back. It's a whole different game in 2025 if you have a guy like Sean Murphy healthy behind the backstop.
To your point, and If you're looking for this on Baseball Reference, if you go to the team page for 2024 and you go to pitching splits, it's towards the very bottom, but you can see performance by catcher. Braves pitchers had a 3.85 ERA throwing to Travis d'Arnaud. They had a 2.85 ERA throwing to Sean Murphy. So a full run better to Sean Murphy. Okay. The opposing batting average allowed was 243 to Travis d'Arnaud. It was 222 to Sean Murphy. So 21 points better. The OPS went from 698 with Travis d'Arnaud to 629 with Sean Murphy in just about every
You can't say
respect.
that's a coincidence. You can't say that's a coincidence.
The sample size feels like it's large enough. 69 games for Sean Murphy, really nice sample size there. 89 for Travis d'Arnaud. It feels like it's large enough for that to be at least somewhat meaningful. So like you have to acknowledge dude can call a game and he is good. Um and then the other reason why I think he can be better in 2025, think back to that 23 first half. Travis d'Arnaud was out. He started almost every single game down that in that stretch. He played almost every single day for a full month. And when he's been at his best, he has played almost every single day. His best full year in Oakland, 2022, he started 116 games, had a 759 OPS, and over the summer specifically, you can't replicate this exactly because of the heat in Atlanta, but in July and August in Oakland in 22, in July, he batted 299 with a 905 OPS. In August, he batted 330 with a 975 OPS. He made 50 starts in those 2 months, 39 at catcher, 10 at DH, and he pinch hit one time. So I think part of it is he's making $15 million. He needs to start 2 out of every 3 games. Atlanta like to swap those guys and do every other game. It needs to be 2/3 a healthy Sean Murphy, 1/3 Travis d'Arnaud versus swapping every other game so these guys can get into a groove. I'd be fine if you gave Sean Murphy an entire series. You let him start 3 games in a row, and then you have a travel day maybe, and then he starts the first 2 games of the next series, and Travis d'Arnaud gets the finale. Travis d'Arnaud is a very important part of the squad. He should be the primary pinch hitter probably on this squad. Sean Murphy needs to play 4 out of every 5 games. He doesn't
Yep.
need to be playing 2 or 3 in that 5-game stretch.
I'm with you. And I know that he had a shortened season this year because of the oblique, but I think what we have seen from him in the past, that increased workload going into 2025 can be a lot more extensive than maybe some other veteran catchers across the league. He only had played 69 games in 2024, started 67. That was good enough for 594 innings, Lindsay. In 2022, that big year in Oakland, he hit 1,000 innings. He was at 1,004 innings. I think you can get back there. But even if you don't, because of the heat in Atlanta, I think you can get around 875, 900 innings. That would be enough for 100 games to start. And that's what we're talking about, around that two out of 3 every games, or even 3 out of 4 every games with him behind the plate. That's exactly what the Braves need in 2025.
Absolutely. This is the time of the dude's career to ride him. This is why you signed him to a long-term deal. He's not old. When he's healthy, he needs to be the primary catcher on an everyday basis. I do also think that there's something to what Seitzer said. We talked about this on last Friday's show about the guys pressing. His chase rate was up. His swings in the zone were down because he was getting less pitches in the zone. I do think some of that's going to naturally regress back to normal with the injury concerns. Hopefully, knock on wood, being not as bad next year. I do want to talk about Drake Baldwin real quick. We're going to run out of time here. We went a little longer than I thought we were going to on the Sean Murphy thing. I don't know how much we see Drake Baldwin in 2025, honestly. Let's go back to last Friday. I didn't have time to pull the audio, but I do have the quote here from Alex Anthopoulos talking about Drake Baldwin. Look, the way he's played, he's definitely a phone call away at this point. The young catching position, to me, it's like breaking the glove, right? It's not just how these guys perform. There's so much more to it with the information. There is so much thrown at these guys with the game planning, the game calling. Never mind the offensive stuff. You don't ever go wrong at that position getting more time to develop. This, let's face facts. This is an organization that has not valued young catchers at all. They traded away Shea Langoliers. William Contreras spent more time at DH than behind the plate. They have always been a team that they like to sign a veteran catcher to come in and be one of your guys. Your Kurt Suzuki, AJ Przinsky. They brought Brian McCann back, Travis d'Arnaud. They like having veteran catchers over young guys. Yes, Drake Baldwin crushes the heck out of the ball. His 90th percentile exit velo in AAA last year was 106.5. The MLB average is like 103. Okay. He rips balls. He is crushing in the Arizona Fall League right now. He's 5 of 13 with a homer, a double, and he's also ripped like 7 or 8 over 100-mile-an-hour batted ball events so far. Atlanta just doesn't like to use young catchers, and I don't see that changing this upcoming year. Barring some sort of injury, I don't expect them to use Drake Baldwin any significant amount in 2025. And I would go so far as to say, if it wasn't for AA specifically talking about in that press conference how many catchers we had to use in 2021, I think he said we had to use something like 8 catchers in 21. If it wasn't for that, I would question whether or not he might be traded in the offseason to make some sort of upgrade. But given the fact that he just feels like he's a little scarred from having to use 7 different guys, I don't know if you see a Baldwin trade, but I do think this is still at least one more year of Sean Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud. And then when Travis d'Arnaud's club option is up, again, this is the final season for Travis d'Arnaud. He's 35. He'll turn 36 before the season starts. I would expect this to be Sean Murphy's club with Drake Baldwin as the primary backup. I just don't think you can afford to go into a equal timeshare between Murphy and d'Arnaud in 2025.
Oh, no, I agree completely. No, I think we definitely need, if injury is not a concern in 2025, there should be no reason why Sean Murphy doesn't play 100 games, at least. On the Baldwin conversation, I think you're right. I think unless there is just a juicy deal that you cannot give up, Lindsay, Drake Baldwin needs to stay in the Braves organization, because what's this entire narrative we've talked about in this episode? Keeping the health of the backstop of these catchers. If that is the case, if that happens, then that position group is completely changed from what we saw in 2024. If you don't have that, Drake Baldwin should. We don't know yet. He only has 75 games at the AAA level, let alone none at the major league level. So he should be a pretty good jump up. He's looking good in the fall league, as you mentioned. He's looked very good at Gwinnett so far in his 70 plus games that he's played, but that doesn't always translate. And heading into the major leagues, especially in a tough position like catcher, where you don't only get to focus about your performance, that can be a big game changer. So in my mind, I do agree that you need to keep Drake Baldwin if you possibly can. However, as you've mentioned with AA, if he likes to have veteran backstops, if you can trade him, we mentioned it yesterday, maybe a guy like Nico Horner, I think you pull that trigger, you make that deal because it makes your team better today and not tomorrow. And where this roster construction is, Lindsay, I don't think we have those moments to wait right now. I think you need to go ahead and push that roster construction just a little farther in that case. But if you can hold it, Drake Baldwin would be a great piece to have just sitting in your pocket if you need him in June, July, or August when those hot summer months come up. And Sean Murphy, as you mentioned, struggles during those times.
Yeah. Let us know what you think. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Christian's on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh. Again, the show's on Twitter, Braves_today. You can also, you can email us, contact@bravetoday.com. We've got a Facebook page. We have that Twitter account, Instagram. If you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below. But either way, subscribe to the show. Tell your friends that they can go out to hear some great conversation about the Atlanta Braves with the Braves Today podcast. We'll see you tomorrow on Braves